This video is a recording of our Python Notebook Data Science workshop we hosted on Saturday, April 12th. Vincent D. Warmerdam and one of our server members, Johnny, will walk through and present a new Python notebook called Marimo. They'll be demonstrating live the features of Marimo and how to use it going forward, and the improvements Marimo has over what people may be used to, like a Jupyter notebook. I hope you enjoy this presentation.
Okay, so what we've got here is, something that looks like a notebook, and there's code above. We're going to run that in just a little moment. But what I figured I might do first is show you a notebook environment that's just a little bit different. And yeah, feel free to post questions, by the way. I'll gladly answer them in line. But I'm going to do some things now that start pretty familiar. So I'm going to just declare two variables here. And I'm starting a new cell below. This is stuff that you can do in Jupyter as well. And, I can add two numbers together. So far, so good. I've not really done anything crazy just yet. Another thing I can do, by the way, is I can reorder these cells. This is something you can also do in Jupyter. Once again, nothing too crazy is happening. But let's now, just for fun, change the variable a to 10, and let's rerun this one cell. And the moment that I run this one cell, the cell above over here updates. That is something that Jupyter typically doesn't do. If you change a cell somewhere, and if that changes the memory representation of a variable, then you manually have to make sure that all the cells that depend on that variable, that you run those manually. I mean, you can also not do that, but then you're in this awkward moment when what you see on screen might not actually represent what is in your memory, so to say. So this is a different notebook environment, just simply because of this one fact. This is the thing that makes Marimo quite different, and this is also one of the main things that a lot of people love. But the fact that Marimo works this way also comes with a couple of interesting consequences that I would like to talk about. What I think is the most interesting consequence, or at least the thing that drew me into Marimo when I first saw this, I was kind of like, okay, this is a reactive trick that is definitely kind of nice. And, a thing that you can do is there's a tab on the side over here where you can inspect the dependencies between the cells, So there's this reactive nature. Okay, cool, but why does that matter? Well, turns out that you can actually do a couple of tricks if you have a fully reactive system. So one thing I can do is I can maybe introduce a slider of sorts, right? This is a slider that I can add, and let's also attach the label demo slider, right? This is a UI element, so let's call that slider. But what I can now do, I should also show the slider, right? Otherwise you don't see it. But what I can now do is I can say, hey, let's take the value from that slider. And now, whenever the slider updates, the value of A updates, and in return, the sum over here updates. And oh, that makes sense when you think it's all reactive stuff, but hang on. That also means that I can just mix my Python code with user interface elements quite natively. And in this case, I'm doing something with a slider, but as we'll see in a bit, we can really get crazy here and we can really just come up with our own widgets to dunk in here and to do fun stuff with. And okay, so this is definitely kind of interesting and definitely kind of cool. But before diving deeper, it might be good to also explain how this exactly works, because that's like a theme, right? Like it's great that we see a fancy demo, but if we want to understand this deeper, maybe we should also try and break it. So let's break this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to write something that is totally legal in Jupyter, but what Marimo does not allow whatsoever. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say a is equal to 10 here. And this breaks. And the reason why it breaks is it's saying, hey, you cannot redefine a because a was already defined in this other cell over here. And it's a bit of I have a drawing tablet, but the recording software doesn't allow for it, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But what I'm going to do now is just open up TL Draw to sort of hopefully explain this a little bit. But what you're seeing here is we've got these cells in Marimo. So I've got this one cell over here where I declare A is equal to 1, or B is equal to 10, actually. Let's actually write the thing that's B is equal to 10. Then I've had this other cell over here where there's a slider. And then there is this variable A where I'm saying that's the slider value, right? And then over here, I'm saying A plus B. That's another cell. And if I were to maybe draw the DAG, like what are the dependencies here? Well, I can kind of draw a DAG that looks like this. So that's the dependency chain. But what would happen if I were now to also have a cell over here that says A is equal to 10? Well, at this point, Marimo would not know if this cell should run before this cell does, and we cannot really infer this reactive graph in which like in what order all these things have to run. So um, that is why, if whenever you're writing in Marimo, you just got to remember all of that reactivity stuff, like all of those really cool interactions with UI widgets. That does come at the cost of having to adapt your Python code just a little bit. Like you can think about it as kind of a contract. If you write your code in a preferably stateless and very much reactive way, then we are able to give you all sorts of benefits for free. But it also means that we don't really run Python. We kind of run a constrained version of Python. We kind of have a compiler on top almost. It's not really a compiler, but we have this thing on top. Uh, and that is going to guarantee that all your code runs reactively and we can handle and pick it up from there. But it does mean that you're going to have to write your Python code just a little bit differently than you're used to in Jupyter. This is just simply not allowed. You don't get to override variables because that way we cannot infer what the actual value should be. Now, another consequence of this is that I also want to mention, I do think that this leads to cleaner code in general. Like the amount of time that I've seen like one cell data frame equals and like stuff happens here, and then in some other cell you override that data frame and other stuff happens. Like it just leads to so many bugs. So the fact that we're really strict about this, it can take a while to get used to. But in the end, I do like to think that it really also makes it much easier to reason about the code in the notebook as well. So yes, it's a constraint, but in this case, I would argue it's also like a really good one. Another thing that you might also bump into is you might be able to think of stuff like, hey, from polars import star. This is also something that we don't allow. Um, oh, someone's asking a question. What if you have A equals B and B equals A at the same time? No ping, thank you is asking this question. And I guess the question is like, what would happen if I just do this in one cell? I mean, so the thing is, what we care about is that you're not overriding a value that's defined in another cell. One thing I could theoretically do, though, is do something like this, right? Like in a single cell, I could say B is equal to A, and then I could write B is equal to, oh, I have to run this cell, free of the memory. Like this is totally legal because all of the state changes to B happen in one single cell. So that is totally fine. The thing that we don't want to do though is then this, because in this particular case, A is defined in another cell, therefore we cannot override it. Like that's the rule basically. So everything that happens within a cell is fair game. It's just that in order to infer the order in which the cells have to run, we cannot have multiple cells that redefine the same variable. That's the rule. So yeah, you do get good error messages. We're gonna make them a bit better. Like I will say, like this is a thing that a lot of people hit their head on. I think this week we are working on a feature where if this ever happens, we actually show you a YouTube video here because I made a YouTube video that just explains in detail why this is like a thing that you will hit your head on. So my boss is working on that feature as we speak. After the weekend is done. But yeah, we do try to like, why can't I redefine variables? If you click this, then there's also like a proper explainer and a link to the doc. So we try to help you as much as we can. I do want to mention like one extra thing you can't do. So import from polars import. This is also something we don't like. Import star. The, the reason why we don't like this is also like a very typical thing that people hit their head against. The reason we don't like this is we don't know what variables you actually want to import from polars here. Because you can imagine if I take the polars module, there's lots of variables being defined there, and some of those variables are actually references to other packages, and maybe dunder all isn't defined, so it's like really hard for us to guesstimate which parameters we have to pull in. I also think this is not necessarily great practice because this makes it super easy to accidentally override stuff, right? So this is also a thing where, yes, there's a contract, you're not really writing Python, but we do like to think that some of these constraints help you out in the long run. So, like a really core thing in the end, we have we can mix and match UI with our normal Python code, and we actually kind of allow you to also write your own widgets. There's a library called AnyWidget. AnyWidget allows you to define widgets in general. These will also work in Jupyter, by the way, but they will also work inside of Marimo. But the reactive nature of Marimo really lends itself very nicely for some of these more interactive tools. And just to give you a demonstration of this, right? Let me just check if there are. Oh, there's a couple of questions. Yeah, so this people are comparing this to React compiler. That's actually not. I'm not a React expert, but it feels fair. Um, but let me just maybe show you like some built-in tools as well. So I mentioned widgets, and you can build your own, but it is also the case that Marimo just has a couple of widgets that are just super useful. So what I've got here is a data frame of Pokemon. Um, there's Pokemon, and every Pokemon has like hit points and attack points, and there's like a total thing, and there's like types, right? These are all things that we can maybe query. And you know, normally you would get if I were to get like the plain view that you would maybe normally get inside of Jupyter at the moment, you would get something that's static. So you definitely see the data. That's not the problem, but you would have to write code in order to interact with it. And sometimes it's just a little bit quicker to not write code, but to maybe just use the UI. So one thing I can do, just to give an example, I can paginate, so I can sort of go through lots of these examples, and it just totally works. But another thing I can do is I can hit this search button over here, and I can maybe search through some Pokemon. So if I type char and if I hit enter, oh, then I can very easily subset something over here. So that's kind of neat. Let me just undo that. I can hit the total number over here. I can copy the column name if I'm interested. I can do some formatting. There's also some filtering that I can do. So I can set the minimum value to maybe 100 and the maximum value maybe to 200. And this is like a filter that I can go ahead and apply. And, I can add multiple filters. I can sort, but by thinking more in widgets, you also just make it a little bit convenient for you, for yourself to do analysis a bit better. And also a thing to remember, like we accept pandas here, we accept polars here. We kind of don't care what kind of a data frame we're showing. But these are also widgets that you can build kind of mini web apps around, kind of like what Streamlit does. And also notice that there's a little download button. So if you've made an interesting subset that you want to analyze further, you can go ahead and do your CSV or JSON download. That's also something we totally allow. We can go a funny step further though. So one thing that we can do is we can say, well, let's, I think UI table, right? Yeah. So one thing we can also do is we can say, well, let's take the same data frame element that we've got, but let's wrap that in a reactive table component. And what that does is it allows you to also make selections. So I can say, hey, I want to select Bulbasaur and Venusaur. Like I want to maybe select rows, and then maybe another cell can react to that and do something with those rows. So let's do the nice thing. Let's call this a table widget, right? And let's also show that table widget. And then maybe let's open up a cell above, and we can do something like, hey, table widget dot value. And then whenever I make a selection here, the value that's attached to that table widget, that itself is a data frame, and it's gonna represent the selection that I've made here. And now we're getting into like a funny territory because I can do stuff like, hey, let's go again for all the Charmander Pokemon. I can select sort of all of them. And again, this is a Polar's data frame, so what I could also do here is do something like that dot plot, and I can do something like, okay, I want to see the x equals, I think, yep, the hit points. Let's compare that with the attack points, right? Something like that. Oh, and I need to install Altair. Oh, that's fine because I can just go ahead. So that's also a funny thing. Like there's a tab over here that allows you to have pretty tight control over the packages that you're using. And let me just install Altair. That has been installed. Oh, this is one of those like preloaded things. What I would like to do next is kind of give you increasingly crazy demos. It's kind of what I work towards, and also show you some tools that I'm currently working on myself. But there are a couple of questions coming in, so it's going to be my goal to maybe answer a few of those first. So you cannot have A equals X in two distinct cells. Yes, correct. So, but I think people get the point if I look at the charts. I'm trying to get a feel. So someone is asking about what kind of interactivity is available in the graphs. If you are using a Altair chart, one thing you can do is you can have, let me show that actually. So yeah, let's actually just show that. So I'm just going to take that data frame and I'm going to do plot.scatter x. Let's zoom in actually, because otherwise people can't see it. But just to give another impression of like a utility that's just super useful. So hit points and y equals attack, right? Attack with a K. There we go. Okay, so this is a Altair chart under the hood, I think. And actually, I think, yeah, let's do the formal way. So let's import Altair as alt. That should now be loaded. And alt.chart. Let's give it that data frame. Mark, I think, point. Pretty cool. And then it was encode, if I'm not mistaken, and something like this, right? Yeah, okay. This is the way, the formal way to do it, right? The Altair charts. That's an object now. But what I can do, I can turn this into an Altair widget by saying Marimo UI, and this is now a Altair chart, and we're going to wrap it, right? So we're going to say Altair chart. Let's just show the Altair widget. It looks exactly the same, but I'm able to make a selection in the chart itself. Again, it's like a little bit of magic we're able to add on top of Altair. And okay, let's now use that Altair widget. Altair underscore widget dot value, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, again, I can just make a selection here, and lo and behold, I'm able to make a selection from my Pokemon thing. And I kind of like what I'm seeing here, but what I think will be nicer is if I can just use Marimo dot. Let's stack them horizontally. This is actually kind of a nice demo because this is also just my thought process and also how I tend to use Marimo in general. So I just want to have my Altair widgets. These are stacked horizontally. Oh, I think they take up more space. Okay, so we can. I'll worry about that later. But the main point is that I'm able to make selections here, and then data frame updates. And especially if you're doing weird things like fraud analysis, you see a weird cluster appear, you just want to zoom in on that cluster. Having utilities like this is just super nice. And this is also a feature I use all the freaking time. It is a really nice feature. Anyway, this was hopefully the base demo. What I want to do now is also show you what this looks like under the hood, after which I'm going to show you a demo of what I really like to do when I'm doing work with data science in this tool. So I'm just going to go to VS Code. I'm going to stop this notebook. Let's just start a new cell, by the way. But what I would like to do first, maybe just show you what the notebook looks like. So one really cool thing, under the hood, we don't store notebooks as JSON files. That's not something we do. Instead, what we've got is just Python files. Inside of the Python file, you can see that we've got an app. That's like the main object. And that has a decorator, and that's going to decorate these sort of anonymous functions. And so oh, hang on then. So I'm going to hit stop stream. Yeah, make selection. Ah, okay. So now I'm going to share all application windows. Can you now see me doodle?
Yes.
Good grief. Okay, so Vincent pressed the wrong button. That's the reason why this didn't work. Okay. Thank God. Anyway, so the thing that's really cool here is this is just a Python file, and it comes with two benefits that are just a couple of benefits that are amazing. For one, oh my God, the Git workflow is so much better because we change way less lines. We also don't store the outputs over here. Again, because it's a reactive nature thing, we need to run the thing in order to know what the output is actually going to be. But one thing that's really cool is that because it's a Python file, we can reuse UV, which means that we can basically store all the dependencies as you would normally in a Python script. You can say what version of Python we need and also what the dependencies are. So that effectively means that if I were to, I don't know, grab this other notebook over here, I should be able to do something like, oh, let's source the virtual environment, and then I should be able to do Marimo edit in sandbox mode, and I should be able to point to a Python file. Then it's going to immediately install all the dependencies, and this is now sandboxed in a UV environment without me having to do anything. And also, another thing to mention that's just really nice, because this is a Python file, I can still call Python and then file, because at the end over here, we've got the very well-known if dunder name equals main, which also means that you can just reuse this as a proper Python script. What you can even do is define a typer app inside of your notebook, and you can run this as a command line util. It is still just a Python file. So, yeah, like that is also just such a nice feature. I'm going to show in a bit why, by the way. I have a demo of that, if time permits. But before going there, I would like to just give this one example of a sort of data science workflow that I think really benefits from having sort of a reactive notebook like this. And this is an actual use case that I actually have, because what we're going to look at is my solar panel data. I've got a bunch of solar panels up on my roof, and at some point I was just kind of wondering, how much power do I expect in a day? Like, it'd be kind of nice to know if today would be a good day to turn on the heater that's electric or like that, or maybe run the dishwasher an extra time, maybe turn on the drying machine. And in order to predict that, I figured, what I need isn't a whole lot. I just need my solar panel data per date, and I need to merge that with some historic data on the weather, and those are scrapable. So I have this one data set that has my solar panel data, and I've got this other data set that has things like temperature, sunshine duration, and good stuff like that. And then I figured, I can join those two, and then I can do machine learning stuff. Then I'm just going to use weather stuff to predict the kilowatt hours, basically. So you can imagine, right? Like, okay, that's a very cool use case, Vincent. But then you've also got to do exploratory data analysis and stuff like that. And again, because I've got these UI components at my disposal, it's nothing really crazy, but um, I'm just taking all the columns in a data frame that are not the thing I'm interested in predicting, and I'm turning that into a radio selection element over here. And then, I can select a column that is a variable that I can use to make a prediction. And what I can then do is I can plot that on the date. So this column that I've selected, I can, plot that on the date. You can see it go up, you can see it go down. But I can also plot that against the kilowatt hours. And yes, this little UI thing. Oh, good grief. It is so much nicer to explore my data this way. Not to mention the fact that I can share this with like a stakeholder, right? And again, people can see the screen, right? They can see me click the radio buttons and stuff. Ah, okay. Good thing I checked. The comments were not making too much sense. That's weird though, because stop streaming, start streaming, make selection. Now you see the notebook? Okay, good. Yeah, sorry about that. I saw a lot of confusion inside of the chat thing there. Okay. Sorry about that. We're back in the notebook. Again, I'm joining two data frames together, and I have this one data set that just has things like temperature max, temperature min, daylight duration, sunshine duration, all that good stuff. And you can kind of see that just by being able to select those columns, I'm able to know like, oh, does it make like I can do a bit of reflection, right? Like, does it make sense that I see these values during the year, and also like which of these values tend to correlate a lot with the kilowatt hours, and does wind speed matter? Well, not really. Does shortwave radiation matter? Yeah, a ton actually. So these are things that make sense. This is like a good way to do exploratory data analysis. And having this be in a notebook that also has my machine learning training thing, and below here I'm doing something very similar. I'm looking at my predicted results and the true values, and I'm also looking at the errors that I make over time. And what happens if I take a ridge model, and what happens if I take the histogram boosted tree instead? And you can make fancy charts and stuff like that, but the main thing that I really like is I can quite easily come up with some sort of interface that allows me to compare the outputs of two different models, and then I can sort of infer and wonder, like, okay, is there a reason why sometimes the histogram boosted thing is better than the ridge, right? And like being able to kind of dream interfaces like that, that is super duper nice. But the thing that's really nice here, this is like a really cool party trick, is at the end of all of this, you can see that I'm trying to make a prediction for today. Like it's the 12th today, right? Yeah. So today, by the way, it was really sunny. So it's going to predict the number of kilowatt hours. The way that this project is set up is this project is actually running on Git on a daily basis. It's a cron job, and every day I'm downloading new data from the Dutch weather stations, so to say. But so far, I've only shown you what Marimo is like when you edit in it. But what you can also do is you can store Marimo somehow. You can serve it as a web app. And my favorite way of doing that is to run it in WASM. So if I were to go to Visual Studio Code over here, and actually, I think it's safer if I um, shut it down from here. So yeah, let's just shut it down. And I'm back in here. So Marimo comes with an export utility. And one of the things that you can do to export is you can choose to export the entire notebook via WASM. Oh, do
We don't
people
see it.
Oh, this is an annoying. We're
Yeah,
gonna.
when you share your screen, is it like, are you actually doing the entire like screen, or are you just sharing a specific window?
Oh, oh no! Wait. So now I see at the top there's an extra button that allows me to share the entire screen. Hang on. Okay,
There you go.
dear- bear with me, audience. If I now go, do people see me switch windows?
Yeah, from TL Draw to VS Code. Yep.
Okay, then it works, and that also means that people will now see me do this doodle thing.
Yes, the doodle thing
Okay,
works.
good. Okay, so what I want to highlight is this HTML WASM. That's the one. So what you can do is you can export a notebook as a WASM-powered standalone HTML file. And this is really, really sweet. So if you were to go to my GitHub repo, actually, so GitHub Koning Sola, that's the one. Then you can see that I've got this GitHub Pages link. I can click it. And this is the variant of the notebook that you just saw. But the GitHub repo that does all the scraping and all that good stuff, that same repository also has the final app. So I can see that if I were ever to be curious, like how many kilowatt hours do I have? I just go to my GitHub repo and I can see the kilowatt hour number. And I can also see like, okay, does the histogram boosted thing, does it have a different number? Oh, not really. Okay, yeah. So today will be a really good day to turn on all my electric appliances, basically. But all of this is compiled statically. So it's running Pyodide under the hood, but you can just take your entire notebook, you can run it in app mode, and you can deploy that as a static JavaScript file. So everything is running in the front end. Not every single Python package works, but polars, scikit-learn, NumPy, Matplot, like plotting libraries, those all kind of work. The one culprit that doesn't work just yet is PyTorch and like some of those LLM deep learning things. Like those don't work quite yet. I also don't think you would want to run it in the front end anyway. But there are still like a few libraries, like some of the tokenizers are also made in Rust and aren't compiled. But there are still a few libraries that don't work. It's sort of a downside. But um, again, this is super nice. It's like the one sort of thing I just want to mention. You can share static files, and those are self-contained notebooks. That is just really, really sweet. Also, because like remember, right? You can also, if you have your own authentication system, and you want Bob from accounting to be able to view your app, right? Like this is a really nice way to deploy as well. Because you can limit this in scope. You can say like, okay, this notebook only has access to a certain amount, like a certain set of data. We're not going to share environment variables or anything like that. But if you can put auth in front of it relatively easy. Like this can be part of like yeah, if you go to Calm Code, which is a website I maintain, /Marimo, this is the Django app, but it also has an interactive programming environment that you can go ahead and use. Another thing I just quickly want to mention, like we've built this trick the other day, celebrating inline Python. So one extra thing that we can do is you can imagine if you have a blog that has, I don't know, Python snippets that kind of look like this, right? So Python import Marimo as MO, and there's like another Python one. We built this trick where you're able to wrap this with a Marimo iframe element. There's this JavaScript library called Marimo snippets. And when you do, you can actually embed Marimo both in run mode or in edit mode on your blog as well. So if that's the thing you're interested in doing, like here's a couple of widgets that I made that I'm also able to use on my blog. If you have like a clever little interactive thing inside of Marimo, odds are you can natively host that on your blog going forward as well. So again, the title of my blog is "We are really in the mode of celebrating inline Python on blogs and docs now." This was written to target make docs material. There might be like some subtle things that don't always work depending on the like markdown rendering tool that you use, because there's all sorts of standards. If there are issues, let me know. But this is made possible because of the whole WASM thing. And yes, you can host entire notebooks as apps, but the fact that you can run this inline is also stellar. Like, this is so nice. So, okay, we've discussed a few demos. I would now like to maybe take it up a notch and sort of show you like some recent stuff that I'm working on. Also, because it helps paint a picture of like the sky is the limit, kind of. So another thing you can do inside of Marimo is you can choose to run your notebook in multi-column mode. So a thing that I usually really like to do is have like one column for the base implementations and then the other column for the stuff that I like to play with. And one of the tools that I made recently is this widget called Mo Paint. It's short for Marimo Paint, but you can. This is also something you can use from Jupyter, by the way. Like this is an example of an any widget. Draw arrow. This is an example of an any widget. These work in Jupyter. It's just that Marimo has a nicer reactive environment. So the thing that I'm about to demo just works a lot nicer. So what I can easily do is I can just, I don't know, maybe make a drawing over here. Like a thing that I would like to draw here is maybe like a DAG, right? So I can have nodes and edges. And we're going to see in a moment if this works. I think it should. So I can do stuff like A, B, C, D, E, and F, right? So this is me making a doodle. Nothing too crazy, nothing too fancy. But okay, this is a widget, right? So what I can do is I can just query that widget, and I think get pill is a method that I implemented. Yeah, so I can get the image representation out quite natively. And I don't know what can you do with images these days? Well, you can send it to LLMs, for example. There's like multimodal LLMs now. So one thing I can do is I can say, okay, let's come up with a prompt. I just drew a DAG. Can you parse it as JSON? So I have a prompt, I have an image. Let's go. Click to run. Marimo came across undefined variable client during runtime. Cell 3. Oh yeah, sorry, I have to install this package. I think the package name is Google -Gen AI. This is an annoying thing with Google, by the way. Yeah, now I should be able to rerun this just fine, and everything will run. There we go. Hit run button first, sure. Click to run. Making a request. Oh, and I probably need to, okay, I need to redraw because it's got refreshed. Okay, I'm gonna make a smaller DAG now. Fine. Demo could have been nicer if I had checked if it worked ahead of time, but okay, this is like a really small DAG. If I were to click to run now, then the output over here should show. The DAG has 3 nodes. There's a directed edge. Based on that description, I could provide you with the following JSON representation, and then it cuts off. Okay, so this is not my fault. This is their response that's the fault. But this is still the feeling that I do hope to convey here. Like if you're doing rapid prototyping, what you really want to have is just a couple of these widgets, and then glue everything together with Python, and that is something that you can totally do. Yeah, I can see the thing I just drew. Another thing that's also kind of funny. Let's maybe try that instead. So I'm gonna maybe draw. Let's run this one more time, right? So I'm gonna draw like a smiley face, kind of like a stick figure, right? That's also something I can do. And I think I could turn this prompt into something like make it look like Star Wars. Is also a thing I can maybe try. Click to run. Because I think yeah, so this also returns an image maybe. There you go. Okay, so it did nothing with the stick figure that I drew, but it did return me a thing like this. Make it look like Star Wars. The stick figure is Darth Vader. Maybe helping it out a little bit this way is better. Let's see. Okay, so it kind of drew Darth Vader at the position where the stick figure was. Again, this is we could probably come up with a better drawing and a better prompt and stuff. But this is the point. Like I like to do rapid prototyping. For that, I really do need these widgets. And this is also, just to be clear, like the start, because what I also do in my day-to-day is I maintain a lot of these libraries that allow you to have more expressive widgets. So just to give a example of stuff that you can do, note, by the way, the documentation for this plugin is called Wiggly Stuff. The whole documentation page is just a Marimo app that's actually running that can give you a live demo. But one of the widgets that I've made is a 2D slider. So what you can see is as I move the puck around in my 2D slider, a chart updates. Again, this is just Marimo being Marimo. There's an input element here, and there's an output element there. We put them next to each other. Another one that I made is this matrix demo. So I can come up with like a definition of a Gaussian mixture, so to say. You can see whenever I update a matrix over here, but then the distribution updates. If you're into covariance matrices, this is like a fun demo. Similarly, PCA. PCA, think if you're a data scientist, you know what that means. But if you PCA in the end is still just a matrix transformation. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking all the RGB values and I'm mapping that to a two-dimensional plane. Again, this is Marimo being Marimo. Input element here, responsive output there. And what's actually happening is in this website, because there's a question, there is Python running inside of WASM, and that is running in its own. I think it's not. WASM has its own runtime environment in the browser, I think. So it's not running any JavaScript, but I'm not translating Python into JavaScript or anything like that. It is really WASM running Python all in the front end. That's really what's happening over here. But also, like in the end, those details are stuff you don't have to think about. That's also just the convenience of it. Pyodide just works, and Marimo is also deployable. As long as you're not using any Python libraries that aren't supported in WASM, you should be good. And the sky really is the limit here. So at some point, I was also wondering, like, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we could have like sliders that are just inline inside of Markdown? So this is a Tangle widget, so you can basically just have some text inside of Markdown. And whenever you click and drag, slide to the left and the right, you can have the Markdown itself update. And in this particular case, a number of coffees, the cost per coffee, the dollar value updates. But again, because it is Marimo, some input here, some output there reacts. Why not update a chart? So I can also change a couple of values here. This could be part of like a very interactive story. In this particular case, I'm talking about Amdahl's law. But you really do get rich, not just analyses, but also output documents. And that's also a point I'm really trying to drive home here. For your blog and for your docs, this really is freaking amazing, is what I'll say. I think we're almost at time, and what I would like to maybe do as a final demo is just kind of go for the craziest thing I've done in Marimo like last week, just to sort of show you like, hey, you can really kind of expand your mind a little bit here. And to do that, I think I've got that open here. Yeah, this is the one. So let's do Marimo edit, and then I think I'm in the virtual environment, so it's fine. Notebooks, dunder init.py. And I've got a browser that's opening up over here. I'm going to move it to this window. And then I'm going to show you something that's definitely hot off the press and new, but also kind of like this might actually be a very cool future. So what you're looking at here is a notebook that has a vector database implementation, quote unquote. It's just a class that wraps around polars in a nice way, and that way I have a very simple, convenient API. I've defined an index class over here. I've defined some utility functions down below. This is a column that just has the implementation. On the right, I have some UI with a proper demo. So can I use vector lookup stuff to find me good recipes? And I can type pork here. And when I do, this table down below here updates. It's using model to vec, which is a very nice, very fast library for embeddings. And I'm using my create index, load index functions here. So I can confirm that everything works. What I can also have in this notebook, if I scroll all the way to the left here, is I can have some tests. And as of last week, we added this feature where if you have a cell where all of your functions start with test underscore, then it can actually recognize that one cell as a proper PyTest cell. And it will just run all these functions as unit tests inside of it. But kind of the funny thing, if I now go back to VS Code, actually, if I were to run PyTest against that notebook, it would also just run PyTest as normal. And I've done a bit of a trick here with some Marimo internals, but at some point I just got thinking like, hey, it's actually kind of nice to build a tool that's meant to be used in a notebook from a notebook. And, I could sandbox this, I can add unit tests to it, and I can add a little Python build script that if all the tests pass, that we then just build a proper Python package around it. Those are things that you can script together actually with these notebooks. And at this point in time, I've actually made a couple of Python packages that in the end are just a Marimo notebook with a build script that I've written manually. But the fact that I can actually safely consider writing proper Python packages from a notebook without like any shame, like it's just a really nice experience. That's kind of the craziest thing that happened to me last week. It's actually gotten to the point where, for me, it is more convenient to write tools for notebooks inside of a notebook than outside of it. Because doing it this way also just completely removes the whole, oh, I got to copy this cell from the notebook into this Python file, and then I got to make sure that it works. No, I can just keep everything in the same environment. And especially if I'm doing interactive or visual stuff, it just makes a whole lot of sense to do it this way. Um, so this is why I think notebooks in Python have become better. There are thoughts that I can experience now that I simply would not have been able to experience a couple of years ago. It's part of it really is UI components and reactive nature and all of that, but a lot of it is also just, hey, the notebook is still a Python, and that allows me to just reuse all these cool things that I'm used to. So that's the end of my pitch, and sorry for the screen hiccups there. It would have been so nice to like doodle more, like that would have been cool to demo, but I think at this point in time, a bunch of folks probably have questions. So I hope people enjoyed this little demo. Sorry for the audio, like the video hiccups, but hopefully I'm still able to convince to y'all that Remo is kind of nice and there's like new things that we can consider. Note that the any widgets that I demoed, by the way, those will also work in Jupyter, and you can also get the reactivity to work from there. Just so you know, like that's still fair to mention. It's just way easier to get the reactivity to work inside of Marimo. Like that's the gateway, I will say. And yeah, and also I've not been able to show you all the features of Marimo just yet. That's also a thing to remember. I'll gladly show you more stuff if there's time, but I do want to make sure there's plenty of time for questions.
Yeah, and we could always host future sessions as well. But yeah, it looks like there's some questions coming in.
Yeah, so one of them is like, hey, is there an awesome Marimo thing on GitHub? And yeah, if you go to the Marimo team awesome Marimo repo, it doesn't have everything, but it has a fair amount of stuff. So like a few libraries, like the Wiggly stuff thing that I mentioned, the Mo Paint thing that I just showed you. Also, like a couple of podcasts that some of the team members have been on. So, like Awesome Marimo. If there's tools missing, we'll gladly add it to the list. But the Awesome Marimo list will be like a good place to get started. Another good place to also get started, if you go to the docs, we have lots of examples here. But if you go to the API reference, make sure you check the inputs over here. Just because like a lot of I've had it happen to me a few times that I kind of thought like, oh, I should make a plugin, and then no, I shouldn't because it's already built into Marimo. So before checking like other libraries for user interface elements, just make sure that you check it here as well, because there's a bunch of data frame utilities that I've not shown yet that are definitely like around here. And also, if you're curious, like any widget is a library that makes it easier for you to build these widgets. It's a very impressive project, and they also have this community tab on their docs that just highlights a few like any widgets that are relatively popular. So here's one of mine as well. This one's called Draw Data. This one allows you to draw a data set, like a 2D data set basically, and then use that data set for teaching. Like that's a thing that I built. But there's other things that people have made, a lot of bio stuff, like a genome browser for Python. I don't know what a genome browser is, but like I'm sure people do. So like if people are interested in just exploring the widgets, this would also be like a good place to start. These like there might be exceptions, but in general, any widgets are designed to be compatible with Marimo. So, that should also help. Alternatively, if people don't have questions, we can go back to my Star Wars drawing and we can try to see if we can get that thing to work. That's also fun. But feel free to
Okay.
ask questions at this point.
Yeah, he's asking about whether VS, I think VS Code or Git was talked about.
It's a bit
What you
awkward
said.
working with Jupyter Notebook. Yeah, so in this particular case, if we go back to VS Code and just have a look at what the yeah, maybe not that one, but if we just take this overview notebook, right? Like what is in here? Oh, so a cell is really just Python inside of a function, and that's about it. So the mental picture also means that if you change one line inside of a cell in Marimo, that also means that only one line changes in this representation as well. The awkward thing really with a lot of these Jupyter notebooks is that if I change one line here, oh, the output cell also changes, and the output cell is often stored, and the memory address changes. Therefore, like a whole thing might change, and like none of that stuff is actually happening here because we never store the output. That's something we just don't store inside of Marimo. So if you are interested, by the way, we tend to have a pretty good YouTube channel. Let me just switch my account to the Marimo one. Yeah, got it. Because then I can go to where's the button? Okay, Marimo Python. There we go. This is our YouTube channel. A lot of stuff that we talk about, we tend to also make videos for, if that's of interest. So we have like a video on why we don't allow for reassigning variables. But there's also this one video about Git. And it's a popular video at this point. But the funny thing, like, watch this video because I'm going to start with just a few unintuitive ways that making a change in a notebook causes your Git to blow up. And then I show you the same difference in Marimo, and then I talk about why. So if you're interested to learn more about that, the YouTube channel is a pretty good one to hook on to. Yeah, so yeah, it's we don't have an esoteric JSON blob. That's not a problem. We have a very boring Python file. I guess that's something you could say, but boring is good. Yeah, exactly. Burmese Python confirms boring is good. Surprises are bad. Boring is good. I'm gonna scroll up now because I'm pretty sure I might have missed on a few things, but I think we're we're almost there. Boring tech works. Yeah, I tend to agree. So I guess like a thing maybe to wrap up with is also just to maybe ramble a little bit from my end, like what is stuff that I'm working on and stuff that I'm kind of exploring. So like one thing, and also the stuff I'm about to say is like not a promise, right? This is sort of stuff that we are sort of brainstorming about with no promises whatsoever, just to sort of set the stage right there. But like one could daydream a little bit. And like, okay, if we're dealing with this reactive environment, right, and we've got these like three cells, like just to emphasize some stuff that we could do in the future, right? Okay, and let's say that we have some dependency chains like this. Well, then theoretically, right, if I'm at the start of the program, then this can run independent of this, and it can be independently run from this. So, okay, that theoretically we can run some stuff in parallel there. And oh, also by the way, if this one is done but these two aren't yet, then we can also move on to here. And oh, actually, there might be some performance benefits that we can maybe give you, right? So like, hey, maybe can we design Marimo to get better at running batch jobs and stuff like that? That is something we can also consider because we have this reactive capacity at our disposal. So like that's some stuff that I think is pretty cool and interesting too, right? That's especially with like the newer Python stuff that's on the horizon. You can kind of smell a path that might allow us to get there quite easy. No promise, by the way. This is just sort of stuff that is in the back of our minds. And then another thing that is also like something that I'm personally wondering about, and this is like the final demo. Mo chords. This is preview stuff, by the way. But you can wonder, like, okay, can we maybe also make widgets for like very specific use cases? So like one thought I'm playing with is like maybe we can do something for GeoJSON, right? Like the geo people might have some things they're thinking about that might be fun and cool. But remember when I showed you can make a selection in an altair chart? I mean, that's cool, but it's a 2D chart. I'm kind of also wondering, like, can we do the same thing, but like in like 10 dimensions? Because if we can do that, then we can do cool stuff with embeddings maybe as well. So I'm also exploring making UI elements that allow for that. And this is like an interactive parallel coordinates chart. The way it works is that every single line that you see here is basically a row in a data frame. And like there's column 0, column 1, there's like all sorts of columns. But you can click and drag and effectively just swipe around here to also make selections. And you can also imagine like a kind of a machine learning use case here where if there's lots and lots of features and you want to select across multiple columns at the same time and the color means something, like maybe the color is a label that you're interested in and you're interested in finding fraud, right? Like, oh man, like we need so much widgets. There's like we're really just starting here. There's so many widgets that haven't been built yet, right? So part of what I do is also like investigate this a bit more. I'm especially interested in like, okay, can we make a selection here? Okay, let's exclude that. Can we make a selection here? Okay, let's exclude that as well. Okay, given this state, let's only grab the green and purple and remove everything else. I mean, there's cool stuff we can do. So, and someone is saying exactly what I was hoping they would. This kind of multidimensional interactivity is mind opening, and yes, that's exactly the point. Like the feeling that I'm trying to get at here is just if you have a better notebook, you might also have better analysis. Like that's the thing that I'm sort of dreaming about when I go to bed. Like what can I do that makes me better at thinking about data? And some of that is tools, but some of that is also just creative freedom. And that's the main thing that I've noticed with Marimo. I'm just able to consider things that I wasn't able to consider before just because we've got these widgets at our disposal. So, like my role in Slack is to throw a weird new widget in there every week to gather feedback. And this is the one that I made this week. This is, you can already play with this. It's called Mo Chords. It's like parallel coordinates for Marimo. Definitely preview stuff though. Like there's a couple of things I want to add to this and definitely some performance things I got to consider before doing this for realsies. Because again, like I would love to have better embedding tools inside of my notebook, and this would be a really great way. Other stuff that I'm also working on, by the way, and that's actually a fun one to explore. Maybe just to mention at the end. So hugging face spaces, and then if I think we have a Marimo, yeah, there's an organization called Marimo, and these take a little while to load, but these are Marimo apps that I've made. And let's use a default data set here. There's a weird little error. Okay. This is still a weird little error. Okay. There we go. So what I've also been able to make is like a labeling interface inside of Marimo. That's also something you can sort of do. And the way that this labeling interface works is it takes a query and this is like text spam. So like a query could be, you will win a free ringtone. And then I can say, okay, find me examples that have embeddings that are similar to this query. And then hopefully I get stuff that I can annotate for a machine learning use case. So I could do something like, okay, for ringtone, yeah, that seems like fraudy things. Free ringtone, yeah, that sounds fraudy. Orange brings you ringtones with chart heroes free each week. That's also probably fraud, right? And again, because it is, the thinking here is you can upload your own data set, and I use an embedding trick. And then once you're done, you can download your, can annotate negative as well. But then you've got your labels on your text, and you can just download your machine learning data set. Like there's also stuff that we can build, right? Like from the notebook. And we can do active learning here as well. And oh, you can use your own algorithm because we can glue everything together with Python. Hey, that's great. Like it's the creative freedom is the name of the game here. Like that's really what I'm trying to go for. End of speech. We're kind of out of time,
Awesome.
I think.
Yeah, I think we're basically at about time. So thanks everyone so much for attending, and hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully, and we'll talk to you in the future. But that's it. Thanks everyone. Have a good
If
weekend.
people have remainder questions, we also have a Discord and we have a YouTube thing. Feel free to tell me what I should make videos about. That's also totally fine. It was the best random click I did in years. Happy to hear that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now have a good day.
Thanks.